Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Best MTG Decks Ever. I'm your host, Joseph, and today I have the pleasure of bringing you a deck that I've worked very hard on. Each card was carefully chosen and carefully picked just for this deck, and I think you guys will like it. Let's take a look. So I call the deck Asymmetry Perfected. The goal of this deck is to use asymmetrical effects and strategies to win the game. Each card and combo is meant to produce an asymmetrical effect, hurting our opponents and possibly buffing ourselves. We strive to have no card that works against other cards in the deck. One caveat is if a card is part of some sort of asymmetrical combo, like a board wipe combined with a protection spell. Okay. For example, what I mean is we've got a Supreme Verdict inside here, or we've got an Armageddon, and those would hurt us unless we were combining them with something like Teferi's Protection or Heroic Intervention. The commanders we are running are Thrasios, Triton Hero, and Tymna the Weaver. We're choosing these two simply because we wanted those colors, and Tymna gives us draw. We're running a decent amount of creatures, and hopefully we can get some draw and some value off of that. Thrasios, we are not running any of the combos to draw out our whole entire deck. This is not EDH. This is competitive. It is pretty powerful. Let's take a look at the cards that we have. So one, we've got Collector Oof. We are not running any artifacts, and because of that, Collector Oof will only hurt our opponents. Dothy Voidwalker will only affect our opponents' graveyards. Drannith Magistrate only affects our opponents' commanders or any spell that they would be casting from anywhere other than their hands. Grand Abolisher is going to protect anything that we're doing on our turn. Hushbringer is going to turn off any ETB effects. However, we have no ETB effects, so this will only affect ETB effects that our opponents are running. We've got Lavinia. Lavinia will only affect our opponents, and she stops people from casting zero-cost spells or from casting spells which cost more than the number of lands that they have. So if someone has 3 lands and 2 mana rocks and they try and cast a 5-cast spell, ain't gonna happen. They can only cast a 3-cost spell. Orcish Bowmasters will punish our opponents for draw effects. Tocatli Honor Guard is just another anti-ETB effect, only affecting our opponents because we don't have any ETBs. Aven Mind Sensor is affecting our opponents from using tutors. Boromir this is an awesome card. So this card will prevent our opponents from casting zero-cost spells, and we can also sacrifice him to make all of our creatures indestructible so we can protect our board. Kutzel is another great stacks piece that just came out. It'll prevent opponents from casting spells on our turn, and it can also potentially give us some draw. Opposition Agent, it will only affect our opponents from tutoring. Drana and Limvala will affect our opponents' creatures, not allowing them to activate abilities. Interestingly, she can also gain the activated abilities of creatures our opponents control. Mural Herald of Argive is great because opponents can't cast spells on our turns. We get to do whatever we want unmolested, and we also will create a bunch of tokens which can help with Tymna, allowing us to draw more. Notion Thief is going to help us punish opponents when they're drawing. The same with Sheoldred the Apocalypse will punish our opponents when drawing and buff us. Toski was thrown in here just so that we can get additional draw. Aclazotz is a new card, which I love so much. It reads, whenever Aclazotz attacks, each opponent discards a card. For each opponent who can't, you draw a card. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, create a 1/1 black creature token with flying. This card's just amazing. It's going to punish our opponents, and if they somehow run out of cards in their hand, then we're going to start drawing cards, and it's just a really asymmetrical, nasty new creature. I want to build a deck from this guy. Elish Norn is in here. She punishes opponents' creatures, buffs ours, and she is also part of some interesting combos. Hullbreaker Horror is just great for mid-late game so that we can clean up our opponent's boards while also possibly sometimes using an instant to counter a spell that they cast. Sheoldred Whispering One is going to punish our opponent's boards by making them sacrifice creatures, and then we can also recur other creatures that we have in our graveyard. Toxrill is great for punishing our opponent's board states while also allowing us to do some really nasty combos. And Vorinclex is just really nasty. Vorinclex reads, whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana of any type that land produced. Whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, that land doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Very punishing for our opponents. So as you can see, every single thing that we have here works against our opponents, doesn't hurt us. Some of them will even help us and buff us, and none of them interact negatively with one another. Let's go check out some of the enchantments we have. We are running Stasis. This is used in a combo with Time Elemental, where we have Stasis on the board. We return it to our hand with Time Elemental. Before our upkeep, we untap everything, recast Stasis, make sure we've got 4 mana untapped, do whatever we need to do, pass the turn, and then just keep doing it, and our opponents never get untap steps. Stony Silence is more artifact hate. We're not running any artifacts, so it will not affect us at all. Aura Shards is going to be very powerful just for removal. We put it on the board, we start casting creatures, or we can create some tokens with Mural, and then we start removing artifacts and enchantments that our opponents control. Rhystic Study will negatively affect our opponents while also buffing us with potential draw. Leyline of the Void is asymmetrical graveyard hate, doesn't affect us, but definitely affects all of our opponents. Living Plane is part of a combo that we use with Elesh Norn and or Toxrill the Corrosive. Living Plane comes onto the battlefield and treats all lands in play as 1/1 creatures. And if we've got Elesh Norn, all of those 1/1 creatures our opponents control get -1 or -2/2. All of their lands die. And then we have everything of ours buffed, and our opponents have no lands, and any land that they put into the board will instantly die. Living Plane also works with Toxrill the Corrosive. You play Living Plane, and then at the end of the turn, all of their lands get -1/-1 counters. All of their lands die. Now, this one's not as solid as the Elesh Norn one, because this one only procs at the end of your turn, putting the -1/-1 counter, and because of that, they will be able to play a land on their turn. However, they won't be able to use it because Living Plane gives land summoning sickness. They will be able to put a land on the board and it will stay there because Toxrill doesn't do its magic right away, whereas Elesh Norn will automatically destroy it. We've got No Mercy, which reads, whenever a creature deals damage to you, destroy it. This will disincentivize people to attack us because their creatures will be destroyed. We also have Smothering Tithe. Smothering Tithe will negatively affect our opponents while giving us treasures. It also has a soft combo with Stasis, where we cast it, and then as people draw their card per turn, that'll give us treasures, which will allow us to pay for Stasis, and we'll slowly pull ahead. It's not nearly as powerful as the Time Elemental combo, but nonetheless, it does work. For sorceries, we are running a bunch of tutors and ramp. This is just to thin out the deck of lands while also helping us pull ahead. And then the tutors are just for pulling any sort of piece that we need. Like if we need graveyard hate, we can pull that out. If we need draw hate, we can pull that out. It's just tech. Now, the cards in here that are non-ramp, non-tutor are Armageddon and Ravages of War. These destroy all lands, and we only want to use these in combination with Heroic Intervention and Teferi's Protection. It's an asymmetrical board wipe for lands. So all of our opponents' lands are destroyed, ours are preserved, and they should likely bend the knee and concede at that point. If they do not, we're going to overwhelm them very soon, shortly after that. We also have a Supreme Verdict in here. This should only be used in 2 circumstances. If you draw Supreme Verdict or have it very early on in the game, and you don't have a ton of creatures to put out, and you don't need to put out some sort of a stacks piece to slow your opponents down, you let them build their board states up a little bit, and then you Supreme Verdict. And essentially, it's like if each opponent has 3 creatures on the board, one of your cards has made them have to remove 3 of their cards, and they probably had to waste mana and turns doing it, and it's just a huge asymmetrical value engine. The other way that we would use it is if we had a bunch of creatures on the board and we knew we could close the game out, like say there was only one opponent left and they had creatures on the board. If we had that in tandem with Heroic Intervention or Teferi's Protection, we cast Supreme Verdict, then we Heroic Intervention, all of our guys become indestructible, and then all of their creatures are done, we attack in, and we win the game. Otherwise, you don't want to use this and kill your creatures. This is all about asymmetrical effects. We don't do something that hurts us and them. And finally, in sorceries, we've got Eerie Ultimatum. We could very well reach a point where our graveyard has a bunch of all of these yummy creatures in it and or enchantments. Then we cast Eerie Ultimatum. They all come onto the board, and we're in a really good situation at that point. For instance, we're running Fierce Guardianship. It's just an amazing counter spell for 0. We've got a bunch of tutors. Cyclonic Rift, just a great asymmetrical board wipe. And of course, the 2 that you already saw, Heroic Intervention and Teferi's Protection. All right, so let's look at the primer that I made. We've got those asymmetrical combos, Armageddon, Ravages of War with Heroic Intervention, Teferi's Protection. We've also got the Toxrill and Elvish Norn plus Living Plains. These are both in play to destroy our opponent's lands while not destroying ours. We've got the Time Elemental Stasis combo, not allowing our opponents to have untapped steps, but allowing us to. And then, of course, there was the weaker but still existing Supreme Verdict plus Heroic Intervention or Teferi's Protection. I made sure to try and balance the hate inside here. So our Artifact hate has 3 potential pieces. Our ETB hate has 2 pieces, so we've got some redundancy. If we lose one, we can go grab another. Free Spell hate, we've got these 2, Lavinia and Boromir. For Tutor hate, we've got Aven and Opposition Agent. For Draw hate, we've got Orcish Bowmasters, Notion Thief, and Sheoldred. For activated ability hate, we've got Drana and Limvala. For instant hate, we've got Grand Abolisher, Kutzil, and Mural. And for graveyard hate, we've got Dothy and Leyline of the Void. So most of them, besides activated ability hate, have redundancy. So if you lose one, you can go and tutor and get another one. If for some reason your meta runs a lot of activated abilities, you could also switch out something like maybe you could take out Seeds of Innocence and throw in the original Linvala. So that is the deck. It is very carefully constructed to be as rough and damaging for our opponents as possible while posing no negative effects on us, and in a lot of instances giving us buffs and helping us move the game along in our favor. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the deck. It took me quite a while to build it, and I love it a lot. I think that I may proxy this deck up and bring it to my local play group to the groans and protests of everyone involved. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.